Gambit and Mousesports in action, but we've got plenty to come before then. We're going to be reviewing with our panel members in around about 30 minutes time all that there is to know about the PGL Major. Who are the favourites? Who are the dark horses? Where are we going on our journey? We'll find out in about 30 minutes from now. But as I said at the top of the programme, it has been a long 3 months. Thousands of teams applied for qualification purposes. They went through the open qualifiers, the closed qualifiers, the minor championships, and then finally the offline qualifier. And my goodness, it was good.
First 4 matches of the day have been as close as humanly possible. We've had 5 rounds of overtime across 2 maps. The other 2 matches went to 30 rounds, 16-14s each one. None of the teams giving up at any point during these matches. G2 is his overwhelming favorites to qualify for the major, and they played pretty well in their first match. They had a couple bumps in the road, but I mean that's pretty much par for the course with them in early matches and early group stages. But those guys still just have so much skill and widely considered to have the biggest peak of all of professional Counter-Strike.
Exposed to the apartments, and he's blind. Surely there's a peak eventually coming in from Shocks.
Great position here. Oh, Bolster's waiting for the perfect moment. Strax gets himself to the third one coming easily as well, and that's a great cleanup.
Optic had a little bit more of a struggle in their matches. They're still reeling. They still haven't figured out any of the the coaching in-game leader situation that they have going on with their lineup. You can see there's been a loss of confidence. There's a loss of a step here or there for them, but still you can see all the skill on display, even in a loss, that they're still going to be dangerous going forward in the tournament. PENTA came into this as a massive dark horse. They've been actually kind of a sleeper pick of people to get out of this because we've seen them play very, very well in the lower echelons of Counter-Strike. And in some of the lower tournaments, but coming into this, I mean, they have star players like Sunny, who's been performing very, very admirably, and he brought them to that first win, and they're looking like they're going to be very dangerous going forward.
What else did you think it was?
Oh, no, not like Madonna, but I mean, I thought his first name was Tarek. I thought that was his name.
Oh, looks like Eco will be cleaned up here, making a lot of money, a considerable amount of money, on $8K now.
Even the underdogs coming into this tournament have shown that they're well prepared, that they're not giving up, they're still chasing this dream. Tai Lu was an unknown quantity in the fact that they were able to challenge a Liquid team who was one of the best in North America. It's playing very well lately, just shows they've been improving during all this time off. This is the culmination of 6 months of hard work for them. The NA teams, well, we had Team Liquid and they won double overtime over Tai Lu. They struggled a little bit, but Liquid is going to be focusing on not the scores of their wins, just getting those 3 map wins. That's all that matters, is qualifying for the major.
But the smoke goes down, and that sort of prevents the trade attempt. That actually might make DD's life slightly more difficult here as he now gets onto the bomb site. And he can try to plant, but the problem is that CT could just rush him, so he's got to be very careful. He's going to fake it initially. And rush through the smoke himself, going absolutely mental there. The spin there from DD somehow finds himself the kill. Wow, well, he's had some time to calm things down as we have, oh, the lineup there for 8-7. Pulls out the USP, almost gets every single player.
Godsend's like the forgotten son of the Nordic region. I mean, they're a team that just has so much danger in terms of, Pronax, who's one of the legendary in-game leaders of all time in Counter-Strike. A lot of skill behind them as well. And they came and showed up. It's always a question mark, but they've showed up in this first match and they're here to compete. It's the godsend that we want to see, the godsend that's going to be challenging for a spot in Poland.
Second half of the day, Tengu versus Mousesports. Tengu from the CIS region versus the Mousesports European team. Obviously, a lot of you guys obviously know them. 16-1 scoreline for Mousesports tells a story on its own. You can tell that it really gets to play against the top European teams on a daily basis much. They just were overwhelmed in pretty much in all parts of the game. Even getting the start on the side of Inferno, still having to, well, struggling as much as they did, but it's just the first game for them, obviously, so that's the land jitters are out of the way, and they obviously get more opportunities to try to get some wins, and you never know, they're the kind of team that have that unexpected kind of quantity that no one really knows what to expect going into the game, so they'll have their chances.
Some good fundamental Counter-Strike, it's what you need to see more of, but they still both lose their lives. And actually, I think the peak from SNK was just like 3 seconds off from spotting Dennis. They're heartless. They're just gonna hunt him down, man. This is incredibly brutal.
Hellraisers versus Vega Squadron was a game that everyone expected to be quite one-sided. Towards Hellraisers, obviously, Vega Squadron we've seen before at the previous major qualifier where they upset NIP. That was one of the massive things that happened in that tournament. So going to this one, between these two tournaments, we haven't really seen much of them within the top Counter-Strike scene. So first half of that game actually went to the way of Vega Squadron. Eventually Hellraiser was able to creep out of it, but still positive signs for Vega Squadron. I think they can definitely be a problem for some of the teams in this tournament.
One smoke for Vega Squadron. An aggression coming in, that's better from Bondic. Gets the first kill, takes down JR. Against B Apartments.
Yep, saw it on the left. Lovely picture. Bondic gets Kashander as well, but he lost Angel in doing so. It still gives them a 4 versus 2 to work with as he backpedals towards CT. Gets Chopper as well. Bondic looking quite good in this pistol round. Asuchi gonna try and walk back out, has no clue who's firing at him and from where, excuse me. He's sure to go down, and Bondic confirms that with his 4th kill in the round.
Flipside versus Renegades was an interesting matchup. You had Asian Minor champions Renegades who finally managed to win an Asian Minor after having multiple tries at it, always faltering to Tailo. Playing against Flipside, that is basically currently they always pretty much make the majors. But we haven't seen them in a long time. They've been kind of absent from top competitive Counter-Strike. So we don't really know what to expect. We know they're a team that's they practice a lot. They have a very methodical approach to the game, very tactical. They try to outsmart their opponents in every situation. And that was kind of the theme of the game as well. They even outsmarted themselves in some situations where they already had an advantage, but they would still try to do a fake. I heard from Blade, their in-game leader, that there was a bit of jitters. Well, they were panicking in certain situations, which caused them to lose some silly rounds. But coming back, I think it was 4 game points that they managed to defend against and managed to make the game in an overtime and then take it. Shows that they have the resilience and still have a lot of different kind of ways to approach the game, and their tactic book is just very wide, and they're good at adapting. And the first game, they got that out of the way, and again, they're one step closer to getting to another major.
The Cloud9 versus Big matchup is actually really cool on paper because Big is this tactical, mastermind, and Gabi, the in-game leader, that is tactical team, and that's exactly what Cloud9 is missing. But on the reverse side of it, Cloud9 has all the firepower. They have all the big star names from North America. All the big-time players that we've had over the years are all on Cloud9. So outside of tabseN, Big had no one to challenge it. But this matchup was just purely about Stewie. This was Stewie at his finest. He was in his element. He got rolling so early and it just never slowed down. Big couldn't stop him. He was doing everything we know him for, jumping through smokes, getting multi-kills left and right. He opened up rounds and he finished them off for Cloud9 and let him do a huge win.
first match of the day. It was an upset, maybe not the biggest upset we had so far, but PENTA, the manner in which they defeated Team Liquid 16-3 on Mirage with a very, very strong T side, just seemed like Liquid was a bit slow to get into the game, and PENTA took full advantage of it, started off with a very fast-paced play style, aggression all over the map. Liquid tried to adjust, but they were simply completely outclassed. The Optic Vega game, that was probably the biggest upset we had so far in the qualifier. Optic, of course, as a challenger team, having a slot at the major qualifier. Vega, on the other side of things, had to come through the CIS minor, so a qualified team beating a challenger team, and they managed to do so, playing the more difficult side on Train as the terrorist, being 9-6 down in the first half. Mir, the star of the team, had an amazing game, was doing a lot of work for the team. Optic, because they lost to PENTA already, they had to put more emphasis there, which in turn made the outer bomb side slightly weaker, and Vega just did a great job of taking advantage of that. We had a rematch of the Asian Minor and a matchup that we saw 2 times there, Renegades versus Tyloo, and the map was Cash, which was actually the map that Renegades won both times they played it at the Minor. So you could tell that Tyloo was probably prepared for it since they let it go through, and I think you could see the impact of Peacemaker in the little time that he was with the team. We saw a couple of really good executes from Tyloo. They were looking a bit more on point tactically, and they had a very, very dominant first half on the T side. Now, switching sides, Renegades started mounting a comeback. The game was very close, very messy, a lot of clutch rounds as well, and at the very, very end, Tyloo did manage to win an eco round, which just gave them enough to edge out Renegades in a 16-14 game.
So the 4th game of the day was Big versus Tengri, which on paper should have been an easy conclusion. Big was obviously the favorites going into this. I have them as a team that should be one of the top 8 and actually make the major itself, and Tengri came off of an abysmal start to this tournament with a 16-1 loss. So I thought going into it, pretty straightforward. Big lost to Cloud9, 16-14 on Cobblestone, the same map they were about to play. There's CT. T-side was the issue. They were starting on T-side. Everything's the man who stepped up in multiple occasions. And I have to say, I agree with Henry in that without Tabson, Big is a whole different team. He saved them so much in this game and really bailed Big out, because if they had gone down 0-2 in this tournament on day 2, I don't think they would recover. But now that they're in 1-1, the pool is going to level out, and there's a chance they can actually still make it through.
The Immortals Dignitas game was, on paper, one of the most exciting of the day. It was 2 very heavy-hitting teams, high fragging potential there. The scene was set on Cash, which was going to be a really exciting prospect for us, one of the fastest maps we have in the pool right now. It kicked off with a very exciting pistol. It was a T-side start there for Dignitas, managing to get the bomb down, and unfortunately for them, a full defuse coming in there with the 3 players surviving on the T side, which is unheard of. That really set the tone for the rest of the game. It was really disappointing for Dignitas after the first half, 13-2 in the first setting. And then we move over, and then we see somehow Immortals throwing the game. Before it was a lock-in, they'd absolutely done it. It was done. There was no chance of Dignitas coming back. But they fought back on the CT side, and Immortals actually looked pretty poor on the T side. They didn't get the bomb down once in 10 rounds. They couldn't get anything closed out. It was actually almost a comeback coming in there. Finished up 16-13. And some amazing plays from the likes of Fox, Jacob as well, but they couldn't quite get over the finish mark. It was a really exciting game with some disappointing T-halves and some bad decisions overall, but Dignitas, unfortunately for them, they're now 0-2 and probably might not make it to the major at this point.
Hellraisers met up with Flipside, a matchup that we knew from actually a year ago at the Cologne Major qualifiers, where Flipside managed to beat Hellraisers in the deciding match to qualify for the major. They hadn't met on land since and ended up on Overpass. Both teams are pretty prominent on the map, and flip side just showing dominance on the City side, playing very aggressive, but at the same time it was very calculated. Seemed like they had a great game plan going on, and you know, that's something you can expect from a team that Blade is a part of, that he has thought of every single thing they did. Electronic was having a great game, and yeah, it was just basically a one-team show through and throughout. One of the most highly anticipated games of the day was definitely G2 versus Cloud9. G2 obviously a team that everyone's expecting to become one of the best teams, if not the best team in the world, and Cloud9 has shown that they can still fight with the better teams. It ended up being a bit of a G2 show, even though Cloud9 mounted a comeback in the second half, but first half was all Frenchmen, to be honest with you. They were dominating the game for the most part, hitting double digits going into the halftime. In the second half, you could see desperation in the way Cloud9 was playing. They would be sending Stewie on a mission on his own, and he'd be the one to have to do the plays. It's not something that is very sustainable in the long run. There needs to be some kind of protocol system behind their play. In the end, G2 were the victorious, and they would be moving on to be very close to making the major. For the last game of the day, we had Godsend versus Mousesports in a match where Mousesports themselves saying afterwards that they feel like they're one of the favorites in this tournament. Not sure if they exactly are, but still, I mean, more so than maybe Godsend is right now. And again, the big difference maker in the match was basically Godsend making massive mistakes on a train as a map, which is not maybe one of their comfort maps at all. They may have been surprised by the fact that it ended up on the map. Losing a 5-on-2 and a 5-on-3 situation, you just can't win like that. To start things off on Saturday, we had Dignitas facing off Tengri in an elimination match, and don't think anyone's really surprised that Dignitas were the one to come out on top, but Tengri, a valiant effort for them. No one was really expecting them to be going far in this qualifier, but still they showcased they have some skill individually, especially some strategies to go by, but still small little mistakes here and there mount up, and they lost man-advantage situations and so forth. So unfortunately, they're going to be eliminated at this tournament. But then again, they'll have a lot to learn from it, and we wish them the best of luck in the future.
For the second game of the day, we had Optic taking on Renegades, one of the North American teams in Optic. Renegades, an Australian team that's been playing in North America for the past year and a half or so. So this was just a well-rounded performance from Renegades. They ended up taking the match. It was also an elimination match, so it takes Optic completely out of the tournament. Well-rounded, though, from the Renegades side. No one really stuck out. It wasn't any kind of star play. It was just good, fundamental, basic team Counter-Strike. JKS had a couple big rounds down the stretch, but overall, the story of this is going to be how the mighty have fallen. Optic was one of the best teams in North America, and they were even competing for titles just 6 months ago. It's just kind of very sad to see where they've gone, so they're eliminated from the major. Tyloo took on Vega Squadron on Inferno, and Vega Squadron ends up winning this game, which was, I think, a little bit of a surprise to many. So in some ways, it's a small upset of sorts. But really, the story of this is JR from Vega Squadron. His AWPing was so incredibly on point. Bails them out. He wins a magnificent 1-on-4 that just seemed to crush Tyloo. Really, despite all the talent and all the promise that Tyloo shows, this really exposed some of their inexperience and some of their critical flaws in post-plant situations.
I felt pretty confident before the match against Immortals. We were pretty prepared, and we kind of knew which map's gonna be. And yeah, the game plan was ready for both maps, and we knew that we needed to step up as we played the day before. But we also know that if we are good and in good shape, that we can crush them on the map where we were prepared. If we manage to play this concentrated, we are pretty strong, I would say.
Cloud9 took on Godsend on DE Train, which is kind of an interesting thing by itself. It's a map Godsend has lost previously in a couple close matches earlier in this tournament. On top of that, I mean, just speaking of Godsend, one of their big critical flaws in this team is their map pool. They don't have a lot of different options. Favorite two maps are Mirage and Cache. Cloud9 wisely bans both of those out, so it ends up on a map that we've seen they're not exactly world beaters on. And here, once again, it just kind of showed. Cloud9 was just too strong. Guys like Stewie, guys like Automatic, those are always the names you're going to hear when Cloud9 takes a victory. They were so aggressive on the map. They controlled things perfectly. Godsent managed to claw their way back kind of into contention, but Cloud9 slowed down the pace a little bit and were able to close out that match.
Later in the day, we had the PENTA versus Mousesports game, a sort of a domestic rivalry in terms of organizations, both German organizations, but both teams are now international teams. And PENTA, the surprise package of the tournament, started off great, like they did in some of their previous games, being up 9-0 on the T side. But Mousesports, led by Rops, did a great job of coming back into the game after that, winning 9 straight rounds of their own. And it was a very close affair up until the very end, but Mousesports did just manage to edge out PENTA and qualify for the major. Liquid versus Hellraisers, it was a very one-sided game. Liquid having a very strong first half on the T side of Train, with Hellraisers winning pistols. So it looked like Hellraisers might have a good game there, but ever since the second round, Liquid just took over the game, was very dominant. Their individuals were very much on point, and it just seemed like Hellraisers were out of it. For the last game of the day, we had G2 versus Flipside, and Flipside not necessarily a surprise for this tournament, just an unknown really. We haven't seen them for a very long time, but their reputation at the major qualifiers is something that needs to be respected at this point. And G2, a team who were the favorites coming into this one with a pretty much secure spot, everyone would think, and it was a very close affair actually. G2 started off strong, Flipside as usual managed to find a way to claw back, and it was some heroics from Kenny S towards the end of the game, winning a couple of important clutches that did secure G2 that spot at the actual major, and they're definitely going to be one of the teams who can potentially win the whole thing.
PENTA versus Vega Squadron was the opening match of the final day of the PGL Major Qualifier. It was on Train, and Vega Squadron has proven that they can be a pretty tricky opponent. They've got some good skill, but PENTA just relied on that tried and true style, heavy play towards the inner bomb site, very, very grouped up, focus on trading, and eventually they ran away from the match. It was a good start, and then eventually once they just broke them, it started out with a little bit of a back and forth between the two teams, but eventually the star power, Sunny, HS, these guys stepped up, and eventually they just overran Vega Squadron to qualify for the PGL Major. Tyloo versus Hellraisers was the first elimination match. The loser of this actually got eliminated from the qualifier. And it was on Overpass, which is pretty crazy, but the cool thing was Hellraisers had come into this only getting 6 rounds in their previous 2 matches. They've looked abysmal the past 2 days, but this was a complete change in style. Tyloo was still making some of their trademark mistakes, a little bit sloppy on some of their bomb site takes, and that allowed Hellraisers to really thrive and come back. And it was a very good bounce back game for them, essentially. And they ended up taking that out and eliminating the Chinese from the qualifier. Dignitas versus Renegades was a very close affair. Not the whole way through, though. It was pretty heavy offensive sides. Both teams had very, very successful terror sides on Mirage based off of mid control. But what it came down to was Rubino had great impact towards the end of the stretch. And also as the in-game leader, he made a very, very smart adjustment right at the end of the game that allowed Dignitas to finally overcome Renegades and prevent overtime.
Later in the day, Immortals end up facing Godsent. And Godsent have a terrific first half. They start off with 12-3 in their favor, and you think that's it, they're going to move on and stay in the qualifier. Instead, it's an epic comeback, coming back into it. Immortals, one of the best I've seen in major qualifier history, and now they're still in the tournament fighting. Later on, it was Cloud9 facing up against Flipside. That turned into a really interesting game. It looked like it was going to be a close one, but Cloud9 just ran away with it. They qualified for the major again in a really superior fashion. Just no doubt that they were going to make it through. Moving into one of the most exciting games of the day is Big playing against Liquid. A really anticipated matchup. Big maybe considered the underdog in this one, but they end up beating Liquid on Train and forcing Liquid into a final match to decide if they can even qualify at all. Just a big upset, and Big are sort of a clan of people who have come from all over the place and have had a hard time finding a home. They found it here, and now they're in the major.
Closing out the day in the 5th round of the Swiss matches, we had Hellraisers meeting up with Immortals, a team that has been desperately trying to get into the majors for the longest time. And today was their day. I finally made it happen, but it wasn't an easy one for sure. Hellraisers was putting up a fight, a map as Overpass, which is a very good map for both teams actually, but it was a fight of two very aggressive, relentless teams. But it was Immortals that were able to fight their way through all the disparity, all the emotions as we could see after the game as well. It meant the world to them to be able to get to the major. Another 5th round game, probably a matchup that no one was expecting to see this far into it. It was Vega Squadron versus Dignitas facing with each other. Dignitas full of players that have major pedigree players playing for them, and then you have Vega Squadron coming out of the CIS minor. Obviously we've seen them before, the previous major qualifier upsetting NIP, but this was just an amazing showdown from them, to be honest with you. They just totally dismantled Dignitas on Inferno on the CT side, giving absolutely no chance whatsoever. I think it was very fitting that they started the tournament the same as they ended, with very aggressive CT side and just showcasing that they have a tremendous amount of individual skill, and they truly have the skill to make their way to the major.
I think it's incredible that we've had the end of the qualifiers has ended in overtime, almost like the circle's gone complete, considering we had the first overtime on the first day, so the circle is completely closed now. I think flip side, they just have this weird uncanny knack of getting through qualifiers, don't they? This is the 8th in a row now, so I thought Liquid would probably win that one, but I think Flipside they just never give up. I think Flipside could be a surprise package at the major. They always turn up well prepared and have good strategies, and Blade will get them into shape, but I think it's going to take a big effort for them to get out of the group stages and make the top 8 this time. I think the offline qualifier was really interesting. We had a number of teams coming in we thought were favourites, which proved to be favourites. G2, Mousesports, Cloud9 all got through pretty safely in the end, but I think there were some surprises, which was really pleasing to see. I think we definitely got surprised by Vega Squadron. I think they did a great job of getting through, even though they maybe had a favourable draw, but they definitely did well in the games that they had. Had a fantastic win over Dignitas at the end. I think other impressive teams, Big, really thrilled for GodB and the guys. They've worked so hard over the last 6 months, and this has been their goal and their dream, and they've achieved it. So really happy for them, and great to see the young guns in PENTA get through as well. I think they were the surprise of the EU minor. They only tripped up in the final, and yet they were brilliant all the way through, and I think a lot of people were underestimating them. So to see them come up big and go through relatively easily, actually, that was really good as well. By the power of magic and TV, my shirt has become redder. Yes, that was the offline qualifiers, and it was an absolute roller coaster for many of the teams involved. But it is time to move on to the major. We are here for day number 1. We're around about 30 minutes away from our first game of the day. We also have a record number of panelists who are former pros. In fact, all of our panel members are ex-pros, including the 2 that we have this morning. So let me introduce you to 2 men, one of which has a major to his name, a major title to his name. The other one has 1 match to his name. It is, of course, good morning to Fifth Flower and Moses.
Sounds a bit hard.
It does sound a bit hard. When I said that in my head, it was funnier somehow. It wasn't quite as hard. Sorry, Jason.
Didn't feel funny.
No,
Paul.
I thought he would refer that to you, and that's something else to me. And I was like, all right, here we go.
Yeah,
but this is great.
Yeah,
yeah. You like how this turned out?
Yeah. No, he's good on this one, I think. Yeah. What do you make of the offline qualifier? It's been a long road, isn't it? Last 3 months of Counter-Strike, from those very open qualifiers all the way through to the offlines.
Definitely. It's a lot to take in, even if you were to follow it from day 1 to where we are today. And for the 2 years ago, it was quite easy to get to the offline qualifier, whereas now we have so many stops, so many people, so many teams from all around the world, and we have this offline qualifier which is extremely stacked.
Yeah, it's a long road, isn't it? And there have been a couple of teams that have made it through.
Yeah, I mean, the tough part with something like this is like just how difficult it is if you fall out of like the legend status, right? If you have to fight your way all the way back, we see teams like NIP and Envy like not being able to do it. Like this is just a tough long stretch of the year that you have to go through. I think it's who was it? It's one of the teams that they had to play like 30-some qualifying matches even to get to the major.
Yeah, it's PENTA and Vega Squadron
Lucky
also
them.
played in the.
Yeah.
I mean, Vega played in the Open qualifiers as well, you know, very start of the campaign as well. I mean, let's talk about a couple of teams that didn't make it. NIP, your former team, of course, not here, didn't even make the European minor.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. When you think of it, like Jason made the point, you fall out of the Legends, it's become as much tougher now because it's a wider field, but you'd expect them to get to the offline qualifier at the very least. Didn't even make the minor.
I think it's just very difficult because these are teams that you never end up playing against. Yeah, you're one of the best teams in the world, you're top 20 at the time, and you play against all these unknown teams that you have never even practiced before, so you never really know where you have, right? That's why I really like this system where anyone could potentially qualify.
Yeah, there's former champions falling all over the place. It's not just down IP, it's also Envy as well. Let's take a look at the teams that are lined up for the PGL major here in Krakow. There are 16 of them, of course, 8 previous from the E-League major back in January that will return as Legends on the left-hand side, and 8 challenges, which we'll focus on a little bit about as well. Jason, we picked out a couple to talk about. Mousesports and GT were fantastic. Went 3-0 in the offline qualifiers. But the ones that really stand out, I guess, new names here, Big, Immortals, and Vega Squadron. It seems almost impossible, Jason, that Immortals are the first time they've ever qualified for the major.
Yeah, that's kind of the cool part, is they've failed spectacularly in the previous major qualifiers. So, I mean, it's nice to finally see them here. They're a team that we've expected and we feel has been at this level to be able to compete on the stage, and just falling right at the end. But a team like Vega made their note off beating NIP at the last major qualifier, which is quite nice. Big is just a fun team just because, you know, the name of Gabi is there. If you're a Counter-Strike fan, if you've been watching for a while, you'll know him. But just if you're into like the theoretical Counter-Strike side of things, if you just want to watch like how Counter-Strike quote unquote should be played, like Big is that team that through tactics, through strategy, gets more out of their players than perhaps most other teams, than many other teams.
Some of the teams that obviously didn't get out of the offline qualifier, which we're a little bit surprised about. Liquid one, Optic another.
Must be
Are
nice.
we surprised? Yeah. Paul, are we? Really?
That's a bit harsh.
Really?
No, I don't.
No, okay. Well, I'm going to
Liquid.
Yes.
Liquid, yes.
I was even surprised that Optic went 0-3. I would have at least thought that they would get 1 or 2 games. You know.
We got to rehash this whole NA thing again, don't we?
Yeah. No. We don't have to.
Are you NA nowadays, though?
Best friends with all those guys.
I mean, yeah,
exactly.
That's true. That's true. I'm a big fan of
Kusta.
Be careful.
Just be careful right now.
Big fan of Kusta. You know, I taught him everything that he knows about defusing the bombs.
No fluff diffusing going on this panel. None of that stuff.
You've done a great job, Coach.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bring me in.
Definitely up for a race here when he comes back to the States. Don't worry about it.
Why does he make things so difficult on you? Why does he make it so hard?
No, but I mean,
it's hard on you.
Yeah.
When we look at it, right? If you look at the teams that even qualified, like Vega Squadron, right? You would expect them not to qualify, and a team like Liquid, potentially have the opportunity to be playing here this week. But no, things change. Optic did not play well. Liquid was, it's a really big surprise, right? Considering they have never really been really good, but even the games they lost didn't really look that great. So
they didn't indeed. Let's take a look at the prize money on offer here. It is, of course, $1 million if you're familiar with the major prize fund. $500,000 going to the champions. $150,000 for second, 70, 35. And $8,750 just for turning up as well. Also, it's a little bit different at this particular major in terms of our structure as well. We've got slightly, well, it's a similar format, but there's a few minor changes which could make a big difference. It is a 16-team Swiss format, 5-round best of 1, and after 3 rounds, anyone that's 3-0 will automatically qualify for the quarterfinals. We'll go all the way through to the 5th round, where the last 3 teams will make it through, and then we'll go into single elim, best of 3 from the quarterfinals all the way through to the grand final. And one of the changes that has been made is to the veto process here. We should talk a little bit about the veto process, I guess, in terms of where we are and why it's important and what have you. We'll see the veto in the first map, but it's changed, Jason. Can you explain why?
Well, it's just taken out a little bit of like a random element, right? And also, I mean, it's given a couple more vetoes. So now it's Team A bans 2, Team B bans 3, and then Team A gets to pick basically between the last 2 maps. So it's just added more bans in a row for one team to be able to just kind of, you can throw less like wrinkles into the field, right? Because it's not 1 by 1 by 1. So you can't really sneak like a map that you may want to play. You can't really play that game of chicken down to the last map or anything like that, which is kind of the big change that's happened.
Do you think teams majority of the higher seeds will just put the other team in to pick remove 2 straight away, or do you think they might mix it up a little bit?
I think if you're a team that has like a deeper map pool, obviously it's a little bit harsh in the sense that it kind of limits how many maps you can play. It kind of takes that strength away, but you also, you can just ban straight off your opposing team who is made of a smaller map pool. You can just take away their 2 strongest maps, and they're kind of left reeling, having to play a middle ground. So it's still obviously going to favor the favorite, but even if it does limit some of the teams with a deeper map pool.
Okay, we're going to get into those vetoes, of course, in the first map and see how it goes down. It's going to be fascinating to see how they break down throughout the first day, and of course through the course of the major itself. Talking about day 1, why don't we take a look at day 1's schedule? We're going to kick things off very shortly with Gambit Esports versus Mousesports. It's all best of 1, of course, in the Swiss format. Fnatic take on Flipside, and we'll finish the day with Astralis, the champions, of course, going head-to-head with Immortals, who will play in their very first major match.
That's going to be, this is now, they had that period where they couldn't make it out of the qualifiers. Now they're actually to the big stage. So it's like, how much is there actually going to be more pressure? Is that going to be like the weight off their shoulders because they even managed to qualify? So that's going to be interesting to keep track of, because some of those players are known for kind of, not necessarily disappearing, but like not playing up to their level in the important matches.
Well, they're very emotional, aren't they? I mean, and some people have said, well, if you could just calm down a little bit, if you could just take some of that away, but doesn't that take away from the essence of who they are?
Yeah, absolutely, and especially because that momentum and that emotion, that they use that to carry them to victories, especially in upset wins. Like that's kind of that's the wave they ride. So if they take that away now at this point when they've done it for so long, that's going to be such a different thing than what they've been doing for the past year. So I think it's going to have to be a slow progression if they want to stay like a tier 1 team, if they want to be considered one of the best in the world. Eventually they're going to have to find a way to curb that back and just keep consistent. But at the moment, it's just ride the wave. You're here now. There's no reason to change anything.
All right, let's talk about favourites and dark horses.
You asking me?
I am.
No, I mean, favorites, I think it's very clear-cut. Astralis, SK, FaZe. I don't think there's any talks about them.
G2?
Not necessarily for me. I don't know.
Not as a favorite.
No, not as a favorite.
Team.
Yeah, definitely dangerous team. I feel like they're way too inconsistent to be counted as a favorite, whereas for FaZe past 5 events, I think they've been in the final 4 times. Yep. Astralis always, I just see Astralis and I just see consistency. Even if they don't win that many tournaments, I just see them all the time, at least in the semifinal. And then SK, I mean, SK for me, they were in a slump a little bit after FNX ended up being dropped.
And now they've won 4 finals in a row.
Exactly.
If you include the football.
And I definitely think that, including football, I saw half of that and I thought it was over. And then I was on the train and I go back.
Out? Did you?
I was on the train, so I cut off.
So you tuned out?
I tuned out. I was like, it's over. VP
it's
won
done.
this.
Right. And you forgot about SK Gaming being really good in the late game.
Unbelievable.
That's what you did.
I didn't even want to go back and rewatch it because I was like, no.
Just a little bit.
Towards the end of matches, SK always strong.
Yeah.
Even in football.
No, but I think that SK has really found a groove here coming into this major. I think that the past few wins that we've had just really showcase how good they are and how great they are coming into the later stages of tournaments.
Okay.
And Phelps has definitely found his way into this team as well.
He definitely has. We're going to talk Dark Horse. I'm going to give you one. All right.
Great.
It's a major.
Let's not do that. Let's not do that one. I don't like that one.
It's a major in Poland. Do we really believe Virtus.pro are going to turn up here and go 0-3 and disappear?
No. Katowice was an event in Poland. How'd that go for them? Pretty good?
They won it?
That was like 2 years ago. It was like
No, you're talking about IEM?
They won it.
Katowice
listen to me, Jason. They turned up in Katowice in 2014. They were in horrific form. They were all over the place.
I'm talking about Katowice this year. This is recent history,
I'm giving some history. I'm giving some history here. It goes back to 1823, the second major. They came into it playing horrible. They were awful. They were all over the place. They couldn't find a good map pool. Their map pool wasn't very deep. They were playing all over the place. They were literally running around headless chickens, right? They came to Katowice. The crowd got behind them. They went through the group stages just about, and then they go and win the whole tournament. Why not here as well? Why not believe, Jason?
It's a beautiful fairy tale. The one thing that had back to that Katowice was the talk about Virtus.pro coming into that was all the professional teams were just saying, and you can probably attest to this, was just like leading into that event, despite them looking bad, every single pro team was just like, these guys are actually incredible. Like, they found that next level, they figured things out, and now this is a team that's, like, other players were even predicting them to win that event based on what they'd seen in the boot camps leading up to it. So that's obviously not the case here. And it's not that they can't do it. It's just that I don't think you can call them a dark horse just because we haven't seen anything. Like the only thing we've seen is bad. And even if you want to rehash that soccer match, I mean, being up and then dropping the ball right at the end, let's just make that a storyline.
Perfect analogy. Yeah.
I think the two dark horses, the big ones to look at here, oddly enough, are going to be teams that have like they're unsuspecting dark horses because it's going to be like a team like Fnatic. It's going to be a team like Na'Vi, where you look at these rosters and you say these guys should never be dark horses because they have the pedigree of being great players. But these two teams are still trying to work their way back up. And, you know, Fnatic is a team that has gotten like really, really screwed by some of the group stages at these tournaments and not being able to get out. Like if you look at their results of where they've been, it's like not making it a group stage, but it's all coming down to like tiebreakers and like, you know, an upset on the other side of the bracket forces them to play SK for a spot to get out of groups. And it's just like, you know, if that team gets out of groups, it would be interesting. Na'Vi as well, if Guardian's going to play like he did just the other week in Cologne, that's going to be a team that's scary. Obviously with Simple as well, those two players alone can carry you to like the semifinals. So I think those would be like the two big dark horses just because of the pedigree of the individual players.
It seems astounding to me that we, just 6 months on from E-League, talk about Na'Vi as a dark horse. Astonishing, really. Yeah, it just shows you the level of competition we've got here. We're going to move on to our first match of the day. We're around about 15 minutes away from that matchup. It's Gambit versus Mousesports. Two very interesting teams, of course. One as a legendary team, and the other one as a qualifier. And it's perhaps not the way round you would have expected. Of course, Gambit top 8 at the E-League Major is a little bit of a surprise. Maybe they can do the same thing here against Mousesports, who came through the open qualifiers. We'll start with Gambit. And Fiflan, I'll talk to you first of all. When they did that at E-League, everyone was just like, wow, actually the hype was real, because they won a DreamHack last year, and you sort of go, wow, they won a Dream, that's amazing. Wasn't quite that amazing when you looked at the team lineup, because it didn't have that much of depth or width in terms of the quality there, but it was still a good title for them to win. E-League kind of confirmed that they were a good team.
I just always considered Gambit before Zeus joined that they were a team that could upset best of ones. You know, they had enough skill to just
good fraggers.
Good fraggers, just go in and potentially upset a best of one. Swiss system is really good for that. But now when Zeus joins, you can just definitely tell like how he has transformed this team into a team that has the potential of winning best of threes versus some of the best teams in the world. We're not talking SKs here. I still think that they're a little bit far beyond for that, but you know, potentially upsetting some other big names here. And that was the shock for me when Zeus ended up, you know, having to leave Na'Vi and he comes in here. I just feel like Gambit has just been completely transformed by Zeus' leadership. He brings over that kind of style as well, along together with the style that they had from before. It gives a little bit more depth to their lineup. Not something that Na'Vi never really had before, because it was always very slow paced. Whereas for Gambit now, they have the skills and they have the tactician to even swap it up quite a bit. So for me, it's going to be very exciting to see how Gambit performs here. They haven't really been playing that much as of late for like the past 2-3 months. Haven't been qualifying to any tournaments or anything, so they've had a lot of time to prepare.
Obviously having a bit of a rave around their keyboard in the player area as well. It's got that wonderful changing
jealous.
colour. I am. So Mousesports, on the other hand, Moses. Let's talk about them as a qualification, because that was a breeze for them. I know. Some people will go, well, they didn't really have the toughest of teams and Tengri first round. You've only got to play who you've got in front of you. You can't do any more than that. They went 3-0.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think anyone necessarily cares about kind of an easier route that they might have had, just because everyone kind of expected this team to qualify anyway. Yeah. So even if they get the easy teams, it's no big shock or anything like that. I mean, the crazy part about this team is, you know, they've always been in Pro League even despite losing Nico. So they've actually always played like the tier 1 team. So even if you look at like the results at tournaments, it's not that good. But everyone's like really excited about this team because of the way, you know, Oscar's been playing, bringing in Rops and having this new player come in and be a star for this squad. And this team seems to have a lot more potential than the results we've seen of them lately. But it's kind of like time where they have to start actually showing it, right? Like you can't just live off of that for forever. But it's been great. I mean, the story around this team this year is always going to be the way they managed to survive after the departure of Nico, that vacuum that was left, having Dennis step into the shoes, bringing Oscar back, and he's obviously fragging. Rops is in, Chris J is playing at a whole new level, like, and then Lowell is like this young star. And if you want to think, if you look over at like the G2 side, like how Body has kind of transformed from this young player last year who didn't have a lot of experience into like a really good support role player, and now he's actually showing that he can be even more than that. I think Lowell is a very similar situation over on Mousesports, where he started out as like a role player out of necessity. He's showed some very good things. and now he can be given more and more responsibility. But
been able to move on in that sense.
I was actually going to point at that.
Because they were playing around him, weren't they? And this is a totally different way of playing now.
Yeah, no, and this is the thing. Yeah, you look at Nico, and it's like one of the best players in the world. Yeah. Why was Mousesports not better? Why is Mousesports better now than they were before? And I think that now, I think that they were way better as a team. They just, they still have their star players. They have Oscars playing incredible. Whereas I never really felt that Nico fit into this team, even though he can be dropping 40, and they still lost.
But he was doing everything in the end, wasn't he? I mean, he was calling, he was doing all the strats, he was mid-round calling, he was trying to be entry fragger, he was AWPing. I mean, it was just you can't do everything, mate. Like it's too much on one guy.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and you can look at it that way, and that's all fair. But then you can also look at it from the other angle, as I guess if you call him like a Nico sympathizer, and just be like, if someone on his team had showed any of this potential when he was in the team, he wouldn't have had to take all that responsibility on. And then the ceiling for this team is even more high. Yeah. So I mean, you can look at it whichever two ways.
But there are more rounded.
Yeah,
teams
definitely.
Now,
at the moment, if you're an opponent, you're going to look at this team and say, way more scared of this squad than we were when Nico was in it.
Yeah. Okay. Hearing that we should be able to go to the vetoes very shortly. It's going to be very interesting as well to get these vetoes up and running. We're going to have first taste of the brand new veto system. Remember, the highest seeded team, in this case Gambit, get to choose whether they go first or second in terms of the veto system, in terms of banning. The first team, whoever that might be, and we've assumed that they'll pick Mouse to go first, will get to ban 2 maps in a row. It will then go back the other way, and they'll be able to ban 3. Finally, last 2 maps left in the pool. The team that chose the first 2 maps to veto will pick from the last 2 to decide who takes the map. The other team will then decide side. So that's how it works. Fiflaren, are you expecting this to be funky? Are you expecting one of the teams to break out something a bit weird here, or do you think this is actually a better system?
So I like the randomness a little bit, but I also feel like that also puts more favor into the underdog somewhat, because when you have just one map left to play, the better team is just going to get a good map overall. Yeah. Whereas like now you have to prepare for all 3 maps. It's just going to be very random. And I think for this matchup, Gambit versus Mousesports, I think we're going to get a really good series to kick off this major. I don't think there's going to be any necessarily curveballs. I was looking into. I'm guessing it might go into Inferno or possibly even Train.
Yeah. Those are the 2 I would think would come as well, because especially with Gambit, like their big weakness in this map veto process that we'll see, essentially all tournament long, or as long as they're in it, is they have Overpass and Cobblestone as like those are their 2 maps that they just win on. They beat pretty close to everyone on them. And if you're an opposing team and you ban those 2 maps, then the win rate after that just drops. It just plummets to maps like Inferno and Train, which is like a 50% win rate. So you can really kind of neuter the strength of their map pool pretty quickly, especially in this veto process.
Yeah, just looking through some of the maps that Mousesports played, it's quite wide for them, isn't it?
Well, here's the crazy thing about Mousesports. This is why I said their veto process has been so dynamic lately, is just because they've played 8 Swiss system games between the qualifier and Cologne, and they've played 6 of the 7 maps that we have in the pool. And that's something you don't normally see out of the Tier 2 teams. And usually you see like a Tier 2 team, as they make their rise, they really select 1, maybe 2 maps that they become very, very strong on. And they go to those maps because it's the best feeling you can have as kind of the underdog or the Tier 2 team. Even if it's an opposing team strong map, you still play it because you just feel comfortable on it. This is a team that will play anything, and they've been very targeted in their bans and what maps they pick to their opponents, and that just leads me to feel like there's some kind of massive preparation going on, and that goes all to the coach of LMBT.
Yeah, and we do have a few teams here that just don't play certain maps at all and don't like certain maps at all, which leaves them with either 2 or 3, maybe at a stretch, strong maps. If they come up against the wrong team, i.e. a higher seeded team, they can remove all of those 3 maps. I'm thinking Virtus.pro here, for instance, could be quite vulnerable to this system in that they could lose 3 of their best 3 maps. They could just be targeted. And then they're awful on the other 4. Not awful, but they're not good on the other 4. Yeah. That harms them greatly, doesn't it? You need a deep map. We already said that before. We said it at E-League, you need 5, 6 maps, really. And if you're Astralis, then all 7, great. But 6 maps is where you've got to be, and Mousesports are there.
You definitely have to at least have 6 map. I mean, we used to, even the guy you have here on the screen right now, Zeus, he used to play on a team, Navi, I can't remember, it was the 3rd major or whatnot. They're not playing Nuke, a map that they never played before, because they only played 5 maps heading into that event. So they had their go-to ban, and then it's like, let's just hope that, and it was a randomizer, so it ends up being Nuke 3rd map. So they took that gamble, 33% chance, ends up being Nuke. Never played that map before, and you go out of the tournament because you don't practice a map. So here, coming into, you only need to know 3 or 4 maps in the Swiss system in the beginning, before the playoffs, right? If you're only looking into I just want to make it out of groups.
Yeah.
All right, sure. Be extremely good on 3-4 maps. It's going to get you there because you can ban off the rest. Well, but if you're looking into going far in the playoff bracket, that will not cut it.
The other side of this is that if you have a map that you don't play, and the other team do play,
yeah, it's quite nice.
Then the same thing happens because you lose a ban effectively because you've got to remove it.
I mean, take Mousesports for example. Overpass is their permaban, and Gambit loves that map. So I mean, that's going to be gone just right off the bat, which is quite convenient for someone like Mousesports, and that is definitely going to hurt Gambit. But that's the big thing as well. I mean, once you start getting to the middle of these map pools, the great thing is, despite us saying that Mousesports has played like 6 of the 7 maps over group stages, it's not like they're not like dominant maps, right? Like they're still kind of, iffy. They're both ways depending on the opponent, the strength of the opponent, still sitting around, 50%, 60% win rate. So it's nothing to write home about. It's just the fact that they are competent enough to be comfortable playing a map that is not their best. And that'll be one of the nice things for them. But it is going to be a little bit dicey to see where it goes. I think Train is a very high likelihood of coming out here.
Yeah. I was going to say Train is the other one where they've both got winning margins on, and they've both played it a fair amount. Although you've made the point, Jason, a couple of times that Mousesports have got this wide map pool, they seem to be able to want to play anything. Their win rates aren't good on most of their maps, so it's not like they're brilliant on all of their maps. They're quite happy to play them, but they haven't seen success yet.
Yeah, and it's also kind of, I think, part of like the rough. I mean, it's been kind of cool for this team to go up just because they've been playing Tier 1 across all these maps. Tier 1 teams across all these maps. That's why you see kind of some of the strengths.
Okay, well, we've got bans out from Gambit, and Mouse have removed 3. This is a test of your logo knowledge.
I was just going to say,
my logo knowledge
is
what's
zero.
Going on.
Yeah.
It's actually zero.
So Mouse have bound Cobble, Train, and Overpass. And Gambit have picked something that I can't read from here.
I think that's Inferno, right?
I think that's Inferno as well.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% certain.
I mean, we said it might go to Inferno, right?
Yeah, it was between Train or Inferno. I think we kind of established early on. I thought Train. Both teams have had like recent success on Train, so it might have felt that way. But either way, Inferno is it's going to be interesting. Actually, I don't think this is that great of a map for Gambit, so I'm a little bit surprised to see them pick it. Although, to be fair with these logos, I don't really know what the other map of the possibility was.
To be fair, we don't even know if it's Inferno.
At this point, we're just stabbing in the dark. We have no idea. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is Inferno in terms of the map. Would it have been Cash? I think maybe would have been. Yeah, so it was Inferno that was picked. Might have been Cash that was left over as well. We'll have to brush up on our logo knowledge. That one kind of threw out us left field there.
Yeah, really did.
Inferno's the most played map at all majors. Not really a big surprise, even after the remake. I guess we're going to see quite a lot of it at this major too.
Yes, I think so as well. I think because it's such a new map, and like you're saying, it's the most played map in the major, I think that everyone was expecting this map to come back, and it's just always been very... It has everything. You can play very open, very loose style with it, taking over mid, banana, just very simple smokes, and just play that kind of style if you want. Or you can also be very strategical, which is why this map works for most teams.
Yeah, and it's not that different from the old version. I mean, I know there are some points which are important, but it's not that different in terms of overall strategy.
No, but one thing that has kind of, I think, started to change, we saw it with the last Inferno towards like the later stages of it as well, just touching the similarities, is economy is just like wins this map. Like the CT economy is so delicate and so fragile that if you mismanage it even just a little bit, you're in a lot of trouble. So right now at the moment we're seeing a lot of teams on the CT side, if they lose a bomb site too quickly before they can get rotations over, very long rotations on this map as well, they just give it up. They don't even go for the retake, especially early on when they don't have an economy established, because if they go through that cycle of continuously getting reset, continuously having to buy without nades, there's really not a whole lot you can do on this map except play passively. And that's where terrorist-sided teams can either be very, very fast-paced and hit you when you can't slow them down, or they can just gain so much map control and they can just manipulate rotations and make you feel really, really awkward. So as a CT team, you have to establish the economy. And in that sense, it's actually pretty good for underdogs as well, because if they do get that economic break, you can just wreck teams on this map.
Yeah, yeah,
so
it's going to be one of those fun things to watch out. Did you miss the days of Dust 2?
A little bit. I
always get to a major and think, yeah, Dust. Oh no, Dust. It just seems weird to me. Yeah, that we haven't got it around. That's all.
I just feel like it's because it's been in the game for so long, right? People just expect to see it. But I think at the end stages of before it got removed, it was just. It wasn't necessarily that fun to watch. You had you couldn't really reinvent that map that much anymore. You took mid control. You really want to cat all the time. As a CT, yeah, you could potentially just try and fight a little bit, but at the end of it, you fall back and you play retake A.
But where are those 5-man long A rushes from CT?
Yeah, it just doesn't happen anymore. And so that's why.
Well, not surprised because it never bloody worked. That's why.
No, but that's why I'm very excited. This is a very old map for this game, right? Yeah. And it's a very delicate map.
It's iconic though, isn't
you
it?
never know what's going to happen with the remake, right? What we're going to get from it. And I really hope that it's not going to be changed too much. I think that they should still keep, you know, the fundamentals of this map and change it up a little bit so it becomes a little bit more fluid, a little bit more on the T side, a little bit more strategical. So you don't just know it's like, okay, they have cat. That means two things can happen: A, push, or B, split. Because that's what you got. That's what you got all the single time. So like maybe some more openings. I don't know. Not going to talk about it. Don't want to get flamed.
He's obviously working on the map himself. Doesn't want to leak anything. Yeah, Duster, of course, hopefully back for the next major. Not here right now, but I tell you a man who is here. He is a legend in his own right. He is a legend in esports. He's the only man that we've knighted so far in esports as well. He's the one and only Sir Scoots, and he's talking with both coaches.
Online esports betting. Dota, CSGO, Overwatch, Hearthstone, and many more. Bet on tournament matches or in-game events while viewing them live. Deposit using money, bitcoins, or even skins. Join LootBet now. Use the code you see here when you deposit and grab your bonus.
So first question, you know, a lot of teams have been non-stop traveling the last couple months, going from event to event to event. SK prime example, right? Looking at your guys' records, last 3 months on LAN, you've only played 24 maps and 25 maps respectively. So not a lot of time on the road, a lot of time at home. What have you been up to, and most especially, what have you been up to in regards to preparing for this actual match?
Well, basically it's a bit wrong. We played less maps because we was not getting to playoffs, but our time on road exactly same like an SK.
Sure.
Because it started exactly from same tournament. Well, basically we are a bit tired, but still we feel ourselves just ready.
I mean, I didn't want to say that you're jumping out of groups, right? I just trying to be nice about it. All right, and what about you?
Yeah, we play 25 maps, but last 2 months we play only 5 maps, so it's not enough. But we have a good boot camp. We last 3 weeks live at our home. And we have many hard work about new strategy and try to good play in this tournament.
And let's talk a little about the coaching role in general. It's changed a lot since Valve started allowing coaches in one way or another. Obviously, it's a little more restricted now than it used to be. So in some regards, it makes your time talking to your team even more important because you get less time during the match to talk to it. As coaches, are you an anti-strat kind of coach, like you're always looking at what the opponent's doing, or more worried about playing your own game? We'll start with you.
Well, basically, all the coaches are looking at the opponents anyway. It's like you're anti-stratting or not anti-stratting is your question. Yeah. Like you can do it or not. We are basically done doing it a lot. We are focusing on our game much more. But about the coach rule in general, I think it's correct because it was some kind of cheat, to be honest, for me. And well, when I started coaching Mouse, the rule was already there. So basically now coaches are much more responsible for preparation itself, not for in-game stuff, right?
Gotcha. What about you?
Yeah, скажи, как решать спорные вопросы? Это... We must help our team and search right way and fix our problems and
fix all the trash talks and stuff like this.
Sure, gotcha. So a little bit of in-game as well as out-of-game work for your players, basically. Yeah, makes sense. Now, last final question. Let's get to what you're playing today. You're playing Inferno, new veto system. First off, thoughts on that, and like walk me through your side of the veto. We'll go with you first.
Well, before tournament, when we saw it, yeah, I told that it will not affect definitely in any scenario our veto against Gambit. I mean, both of us, I guess, me and him knew the map anyway, because it will come to one of two, and obviously they have to choose this one. Same to them, basically, they know that they will choose this one. They was preparing for it, so I don't think it's affecting so hard most of matchups, at least. Okay. Something like this. Not a random. I think it's good because before it was a random. Yeah. Now I think it's good.
Yeah, I think it's good, but we and Mousesports know what map we played, so nothing new.
Yeah, and you two have known each other for a very, very long time. You said 15 or so years, so I'm sure you guys are inside each other's head a lot. So one final more question, statement, trash talk, anything you want to say to each other, or you want to have some fun here with each other, or just good luck?
Well, for me, it's the first matchup. Yeah, it doesn't affect in tournament at all, and I'm happy that I'm meeting my friends in the first match, and we will not meet further in the group stage. Doesn't matter who will win or lose, and I wish them just good luck and good run in the tournament. Nothing else.
All right, that was too nice. What about you? You got to say something.
I'm very respect Team Mousesports, and I wish good luck and have fun.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Good luck with your match. Give a big shake. That's going to do it for us here in the interview section. Paul, back to you at the desk.
Yes, thank you very much, Scoots. No trash talk. Disappointing start to the day, frankly. Far too friendly. Like each other too much. Lots of respect like that. Hopefully we get some more trash talk out of these guys.
Wishing good luck as well. That's a rookie mistake. You
Yeah,
never wish good luck to your opponent.
Yeah. I mean, GLF, HF is fine, isn't it? Good luck, have fun. That's okay. It's very civil.
Just drop the have fun. No luck.
No luck. Okay. Yeah. All right. Time to put your thoughts to who wins this match. Now you know the map and you've heard the coaches talk. Fifth Lauren, has your opinion been changed in any way?
So, contrary to Jason, I think Jason said that Gambit, he feels like Gambit's it's not necessarily that good on Inferno. I don't know. I think this map really fits their playstyle a little bit with the addition of Zeus. You have a lot of strategical advantage here if you're Zeus. If you go into just a deep level of it, you have so many things you can do on the executes and also just very loose style play. But I think overall, Mousesports should win this.
Do you think firepower overcomes strategy? Yeah. Because if we're honest, Moses, the other way around, I don't want to slight Chris J too hard here. He's a good mate of mine, but at the same time, he's brand new to the in-game leading role. He hasn't done it very long. He's still learning. By his own admission, he said, I'm still learning, and I'm really not calling mid-round either. So if strategy comes into play here, Zeus surely has got the call on this one.
Yeah, perhaps. But the one thing that like Chris J will have to bail him out is like the young talents of guys like Rops, of someone like Oscar, who's just been so dominant recently, especially with the AWP. If you have an Opera on this map going absolutely nuts, like it's such a difficult map to play just because you can put him so many different places. The reason why I don't think this is that great for Gambit is a lot of their wins on this map came very early on. They were one of the first teams to really like adopt it kind of or start testing it out. You know, think back to like DreamHack Vegas where they got like 2 wins on it. So in that sense, it seems like it hasn't been that great for them recently, despite them having a winning record on it. But yeah, I mean, Gambit's always going to beat. The one big thing of them, the hype going into the E-League major was the fact that a Dren came out of nowhere. Hobbit like had this great potential, and those guys became so consistent for a long period of time. We haven't seen them for a little bit. Like they said, they had a 3-week boot camp, so we haven't really seen Gambit whatsoever. So this is going to be quite an interesting match of where they're going to be coming into this.
I was going to ask you both because there are arguments for and against this in the sense that are the Legends at an advantage because they can sit back and they can watch these teams play qualifiers and watch Swiss matches and what have you? Or are they a disadvantage, Robin, because they're not getting the practice and the hardcore matches against these teams?
I definitely think it's a disadvantage, mainly because you have no idea what works or not.
You think it's a disadvantage as a Legendary team?
No, I think it's a disadvantage for the teams that's just sitting at home boot camping, not having a chance to play against the Legendary teams, essentially, right? Because they've been very busy as of late. They've been traveling. I mean, last one you had ESL1 Cologne, and just overall, it's just been a lot of tournaments. So, but I think if you're just sitting at home practicing versus even lesser teams, you have no idea what's going to work versus the good ones, right? Yeah, you have that little. It's a little bit of a gamble because it might work, it might not work. Whereas for a team like SK, for a team that attends all these tournaments, you know what works and you know what doesn't, right? Yeah. Even if people know what you might be doing, it's like, well, we've done this again and again every single weekend, and it still works. So
yeah, I mean that's later on in the day and in the tournament that's going to come into a play when we see Astralis play, isn't it?
Yeah,
was
they're
their decision
the X factor.
Yes, I was just going to say
sit
that.
at home. Was that a good decision? Was it bad? We were going to know by the end of the day. I would imagine.
I think for a team like Astralis, it's a good idea.
Yes, I definitely agree. But I think for a team like Gambit, for example, I think it's a bad idea.
Right, because you want to hide, don't you?